What's going on? It's your boy Buddha back in the building for another last Cloudia video, and I have been MIA since the end of last week, but we are here while last Cloudia is kind of in a dead period. We can, I think, safely call it. I can tackle some things that I've been wanting to. So there's some general guides that I've gotten multiple questions about, and I figure why not just make a video with specifics, with a little Buddha breakdown, so I can send people to the video and hopefully answer their questions all within this. I wouldn't say this video is covering a question that I get too frequently, but it is something that I wanted to address just because I don't think people really understand the breakdown of the skill dual wield. When you're starting this game, once you start doing some research, talking to the community, you quickly learn three things. One is that physical DPS runs the show right now. Two, Trishula is one of the best weapons in the game, which is a video I am going to cover. And three is that you're going to want dual wield on all of those physical type damage dealers. I've seen a little bit of debate back and forth between the community, especially when the unit Shift Kyle came out for the 2nd year anniversary. Some people just didn't see the value in making him a dual wield DPS versus utilizing some of his tankiness and some of his traits that require you to be a single wielder. And ever since then, I've wanted to make this video just to lay out all of the benefits that I have been taught and hopefully do the skill justice in showing some in-game examples and also explaining thoroughly what all you get for what seems to be that costly 14 SC. So y'all know I'm kind of on a summon strike right now. I'm not using any crystals for Shift Alice. We only have the OG Alice at our disposal currently. But it's not a bad thing in this case because we know Homegirl does come with dual wield innate. So if I can find that skill, we can look at what it says in game, which I did just update recently to provide some further explanation as to the mechanics of it. So another weapon can be equipped in the place of armor. 2 weapons equipped, physical attack hit counts doubled, each hit's damage reduced to 60%. And that's as matter of fact as you can explain it, but to explain it then further in regards to the whole 60% damage each hit, it takes your one hit of 100% of your damage that you'd be dealing, and it splits it into 2 hits at 60%, which at base gives you a 120% total damage output per hit. So at the very least, you're going to be dealing 20% more damage with whatever unit has dual wield. And it's not going to look like it because you're going to see individual numbers that are less than whatever amount you probably were producing when you were single wielding. However, the thing that you don't quite see as clearly is that there are now double the amount of hits on the screen. So that is the first thing to keep in mind when you read this skill. But now we're going to go over to Lake's Goldmine website, one of the best LC resources, which I will link in the video description, to really see all of the underlying effects that dual wield brings a character. And over here we can see it all pretty much laid out in front of us via text. Thanks again, huge thank you to Lake for this awesome resource. Don't forget, if you've got some spare change lying around and you're feeling generous to the LC community, throw Lake some cash just to give him some inspiration to keep developing this website, because this is something he does on his own time. So I fully support supporting him. But to get back to the topic of the video, we have all the details in front of us. You can see dual wield at the cost of 14 SC is a passive skill. And it reads the following: a weapon can be equipped in the armor slot. When a second weapon is equipped, physical attacks will deal 2 sets of attacks of 60% damage each. So this was here before they actually made the change in the actual last Cloudia client. You can find a lot more of the exact details and better explanations of what these skills do on Lake's website, because he data mines, breaks it down, gets the percentages, and organizes it all on this website. So here is the interesting part, and that is the notes. Let's just go line by line, and I'll just add anything that I think of while we're reading it. Dual wield at its base is 20% extra damage and the addition of the second weapon's stats and trait. Okay, so I addressed the first part of this sentence, but I didn't address that this part, the second weapon's stats and trait, gets added to the character. So let's go ahead and go back in game just to see what that looks like exactly. Go back to Alice, change skill and equipment. So typically if we were here in equips, this right here would be an armor slot, and armors, if you have paid attention, are typically not very offensive. They don't come with high strength or intelligence stats. They're always defense focused, and their traits are as follows: usually some type of damage reduction or some type of added resistance. Nothing that promotes more damage efficiency. As soon as you can start equipping 2 weapons, you can see that we're getting extra benefits not only on the strength stat. There aren't any armor pieces that come with 128 strength, but also, and I'd say more importantly, are the traits that some of these weapons come with. So just like the sword says that I have there, chance for physical attack damage plus 50%. So you're not going to get that kind of effect on a damage dealer with a piece of armor equipped. So just keep that in mind. You're not only getting that 20% extra damage by adding the second weapon, but it adds the layer of depth when looking at those weapons' traits as well. And then Lake states the following: however, doubling the attack has indirect benefits that are far more rewarding, and they are as follows. Double the damage cap for physical attacks, and accomplishing this benefit will take some more setup. It requires a lot of damage multipliers on certain arcs and skills that you're going to have to work your account up towards and then place those skills on said character. But once you reach that end game, once you get your account kind of further progressed, yes, you can then literally double your damage. Now, a common argument against dual wielding is something like the two-handed skills, which was a prevalent discussion when Shift Kyle was released. He comes with the skill Doppelhander, which, as you can see, when only one weapon is equipped, one sword, physical attack damage plus 20%, crit rate plus 10%, and physical attack damage cap plus 2,000. Now, for those who are stumbling across this video and just have no idea what I'm talking about, damage cap is literally what it says. Eidos has given the characters a damage cap naturally of 9,999. It means that no matter what you do to their damage, if you took one of the early characters, you could only get them to hitting 9,999 per hit, which then prompted them to start releasing characters and skills that offer some sort of increase to that damage cap. As you can see, Doppelhander here is one of those skills that promotes single wielding by giving you a plus 2,000 cap, so that 9,999 goes to 11,999. And the fact that you're seeing a bigger number on the screen typically tricks your mind, and you're thinking, oh, I'm dealing a lot more damage because I'm adding an extra 2,000 to my cap. Going back to Lake's website, double the damage cap for physical attacks. The thing is, like I said, it's harder to notice double the amount of hits on the screen versus seeing a bigger number overall. But if we compare the numbers mathematically, you've got either Kyle with his single hit of 11,999. Let's say he does a combo of 10 hits. You're dealing about 119,990 damage versus giving him dual wield. Now he has 2 hits of 9,999, which makes the combo technically 20 hits of that number, resulting in 199,980 damage. So even though we lost 2,000 damage cap per hit, we doubled our combo, which gave us a massive increase in damage overall, even though we lost that Doppelhander skill. Next, we can see double the break and feint damage. Now, break and feint are 2 separate things, but they produce the same result. Break is in regards to boss monsters. You can actually see that bar whenever you take on the boss wave, and every unit comes with innate different and innate break damage multipliers in their skills. So every character is unique. There are better breakers than others, as we know with things like Merity and Zykes. And then also feint damage is the same thing, but picture it as an invisible break bar on top of any normal mobs or characters, other units in arena. You can't see it, but there is a feint damage being produced that will eventually make that character faint if you don't kill it before that happens. I'm going to show off in game rather than try and explain it a lot here, just what double the break damage looks like, because we can actually take a character in game and see the difference when you're dual wielding versus when you're single wielding. And as we know, breaking and feinting is extremely useful because it renders the boss or the mobs immobile for a set amount of time. It's pretty much another stun mechanic that every character will have to endure if you push them to that breaking or feinting point. So whenever you're taking on a hard boss that requires some breaking, dual wield is definitively the king and a must-run skill in those situations. Next, we see double the chance for critical hits, and I assume that is just meaning mathematically, if we're doing 20 hits instead of 10, our chance to do crits 30% of the time, gets doubled. So if we're going to do 3 critical hits out of 10, we now do 6 critical hits out of 20, all in the same amount of time. Because remember, it's not that the combo gets extended time length-wise, it gets extended in hit count alone in that same amount of combo time. This is extremely important for your physical attackers because the main way to get health back if you're not running a designated healer on your team is with the skill Proud Force, which is a heal on every critical hit that your damage dealers produce. So if you double the crits, you double the heals, doubling the sustainability. You can see just how these values in underlying things that you get with dual wield are starting to add up. Double all per hit effects. Now, some of you who are very new might be wondering, what are per hit effects? There are a couple that come to my mind are status ailments. So some characters like Logia, who we can actually see chilling right here, come with skills that have a chance to inflict status ailments on enemies on a percentage base from hits. So just like the logic with the criticals, if we're doing 20 hits instead of 10, we're getting 6 crits instead of 3. The same type of deal with status ailments. That 5% chance to proc on your physical hits is now technically a 10% chance to proc, just making it a more likely occurrence if you're dual wielding. Double all pursuit hits. Pursuit hits are the universal term for extra attacks as they're read in game. You'll never find pursuit hits in game. That's just the community term for extra attacks. Those are attacks, if you've seen my farming video, which is another beginner's guide I highly recommend, if pursuit attacks or extra attacks are literally extra damage numbers that can proc off of your base hits. So right when you hit an enemy, you're guaranteed to do a hit. Then there are these extra attacks and they vary in the percentage of that original base hit. Well, with dual wield, you are then doubling all of those damage multipliers. Now, extra attacks in the very beginning of your game, I mean, they help. It increases your damage, sometimes by what seems to be a minimal amount, right? If you're dealing a damage hit of like 1,000 damage and you see a 50 pop up next to it, you're not going to be too impressed. But the thing is, when you're reaching that damage cap, let's say you've exhausted all means of increasing your damage cap on those hits, right? You get your 9999 to 15999. You can't go any higher. Well, now you can introduce extra attacks to add, let's say, 50% extra damage to that hit, which then would be, what, another 8,000 on top of that? Hello, GL Mako. Thank you so much. But that 8,000 extra attack or pursuit hit gets added on top of that damage that's there. So now if you're doubling those, right, we go from 15,999 with 7,000 extra attack to then double the 15,999 with double the 7,000 Per hit, you see the monumental difference in damage that produces. And finally, equipping weapons of different attributes will cause regular attacks to deal 1 hit of one attribute and 1 hit of the other attribute. Now this is kind of confusing. I'm going to try and show in game what that actually looks like. So here we can see dual wielding Kyle. I've got these 2 equipment slots filled up with 2 different swords, and we're talking about that last point on Lake's website, that equipping different weapons of different attributes produces 1 hit of the first attribute and the other hit of the second attribute. So you can see the first sword I have slotted in is the salamander sword with this fire emblem right there. That means that this weapon on regular attacks, it does not change the element for skills. It doesn't change the element for anything except regular attacks, which is obviously your control button when you tap it and you do just your regular attack. That's what we're talking about here. But the first sword is going to give an attack that is of the fire element. Then the second sword you can see I have slotted here, Zestina, is of the ice element. So you're going to see one in Kyle's case specifically. Why is this relevant? Because in Kyle's case specifically, he has a ton of fire damage multipliers. So when you do your regular attack, one of the hits is probably going to be double, if not more, than the other attack within that 1 hit, right? We're talking about dual wield. I hit the character once, there's going to be 2 damage numbers from that 1 hit. One of them, like I said, is going to get all those fire damage boosts because it's taking into account this fire element. The other one is not, because it is of the ice element. So that introduces a whole other layer of identifying, what weapons you're using, what resistances do the enemies have. Not only do the fire physical damage multipliers come into effect, but let's say then the enemy I'm fighting has a high ice resistance. So now one of my regular hits is dealing like 5,000 damage and the other one's dealing like 100 damage. That can happen, but just to keep in mind, that's what Lake's point means, is that depending on the weapons that you're running, your hit that now gets split into 2, if we're talking regular attacks, does look at which elements you have equipped to that character in the first place. We know the importance of this with a character like Roy, using the skill Goddess Kiss, which regenerates some of his MP based on the amount of damage his regular attacks are doing. The thing is, you run 2 fire weapons on Roy, and now he's dealing ridiculous amounts. I think he's dealing damage cap with his regular attacks, which is not a common thing. But with that, his MP regen is just insane if you can get 2 fire weapons on him, and the enemy doesn't heavily resist fire damage. Like I said, you got to take into account the enemy resistances, not only your own innate buffs. It's something to keep in mind, because with double fire weapons on Roy, you can just basically have infinite MP whenever you want, allowing him to spam skills as much as he wants, and it's just kind of a crazy thing. But that's just one example among many. Just to further explain the skill, you can see these units do come with dual wield innately, right? It doesn't cost you anything to teach them the skill, but if you do need to teach them the skill, that is why you see so many people recommend the arc Sandworm. Everyone says on that infinite reroll when you're first starting, the infinite reroll banner, make sure you get Sandworm, make sure you get Caldina the Great, make sure you get Sandworm, Sandworm, Sandworm. This is literally the only reason why. It's because it's the only arc that comes with the skill dual wield, which then just brings the potential of all your damage characters up by double or more. Okay, now we've done enough reading and talking. Now I actually want to show what some of these differences in potential looks like in game, starting with the point of doubling your damage and your pursuit attacks or extra damage. in this example I'm going to be showing. You can see we're running Ed just because he's hot out of the oven with the FMA collab just ending, and it's a bit of a throwback to the first multiplayer grind fighting Big Bird or Jalabanga, one of the first, I think the first world bosses that you're able to face. And also he is of the earth element, so we don't have to rely on Trishula. We're dealing with an enemy that's neutral if not weak to the earth element, so we don't have to worry about that. We're going to start by looking at Ed as a single wielder. I'm going to show you the setup I have on him. We obviously know he doesn't come with dual wield in this showcase. With that 14 SC saved, I am going to get some SC to put into some attack ups. I think another one I put on him is Pride for some more strength, Earth Attack Raise 2 for an extra plus 20% damage, and Machine High Boost. So we're just trying to make sure we're hitting damage cap with Ed in this case. And as looking at equipment, I've got Tech Blade Loop because he is a machine wielder. He gets extra damage cap and damage bonus if you're wielding a machine. So Tech Blade Loop is great coupled with Maglion, since we are going to be attacking this boss at range. At max distance, I think Tech Blade plus Maglion gives you an extra 80% damage total, which we're not going to be hitting because we're not going to be all the way at the end of the map, but obviously it's a sliding scale, so it's going to give us a nice sizable amount of damage. For his armor piece, I just equipped the event armor that they gave us with the FMA collab, because why not? I don't really have another armor piece that is going to benefit his damage. Like Lake's website said, you got to take into account the traits that are also being added when you're dual wielding. And in terms of armor, there's just not much that's promoting physical damage for the unit, so really anything will do. It gives a 32 extra strength and chance to evade regular attacks. And then of course I've got Hail Sovereign's Ring and Phantom Tower Key for those damage cap bonuses of 1500 on our physical damage. The special damage cap isn't relevant since we're not going to be launching his special. But there's the armor setup. In regards to the arc, I've talked about it. Y'all, if y'all have been around, y'all already know. Icy Guardian is an incredible arc because for your physical damage dealers, because it gives an extra attack or a pursuit hit for every critical of 50% damage, guys. Actually 48 to 50% damage is what it ranges. In the past, I've said that it does 40% extra attacks on top of your crits. That's not actually what it does. It adds an extra 40% power to the crit, making sure you cap, but we're going to be capping with white numbers, so it doesn't matter. What is important is that the extra attack that's going to bounce off of our criticals is 48 to 50% of the damage dealt of the ice element. So if Jalabanga resists ice in any way, it will affect that damage number, it will affect that percentage, but just know that that's the damage extra attack that is going to come off of it. So what you're going to see when we fight Jalabanga or Big Bird is the damage caps, which are his normal hits, and then you're going to see these random numbers of like 7 to 8,000, which are the extra attacks, just adding damage on top of our damage cap. With this setup, we're going to be able to cap damage on Jalabanga easily, and we're going to see how long it takes to take down this boss. I know, if I'm remembering correctly, it's sitting around 600,000 health from what I remember back in the day, so just keep that in mind as we see this boss's life goes down. I'm just going to go straight with the S3 because that is Ed's best skill, is his S3. It's a range, biggest damage multipliers, added damage cap on top, so there's half of its health gone. There's a second hit, and so it took me 3 launches of his S3 to kill Jalabanga as a single wielder. So there's our first test. Now we're going to go over and do some dual wielding and see what happens to our damage output. And here is Ed as a dual wielder. We can see the things that I switched. Obviously, I gave him dual wield. We took off pretty much all of the attack ups because stat increases just pale in comparison to the usefulness of damage multipliers. So I took off all of those. I took off Pride. I took off Earth Attack Raise, which was plus 20% extra. Earth Attack, you can see it's not there anymore. And what I was able to give him is not only dual wield, but also sword boost and sword high boost, which as you can see for 13 SC is now 40% extra damage, which is more than that 20% we were getting from Earth Attack Race, which is going to allow us to take both of those hits, although they are technically supposed to be decreased in damage. It's going to allow us to take both of them up to damage cap, which then doubles our damage overall. But more than doubling the damage is going on here. Specifically for the reasons that we saw on Lake's website. If we go to equipment, you can see now instead of the armor piece, I have Scarlet Blade, which not everyone is going to have, but you will have it eventually if you stick around long enough, if you do enough summons, you pull your duplicates. This is something that's very achievable the longer that you're playing the game. What it does, it gives you 1500 extra damage cap. So now, not only are we doubling the amount of hits and doubling the amount of damage cap, but we're also adding plus 1500 to every single hit that wasn't there before. So we've got more damage going on in that area. And then just to top it off, we have, again, Icy Guardian here. If we're doing double the amount of crits that we saw in the first run of this fight, now we're giving double the amount of extra damage on top of those double crits. Okay, so it gets kind of crazy. So last time, remember, we had to launch his S3 3 times. We're going to see how many times it takes to kill Big Bird with this run. And if I've done my swapping correctly, I've pre-tested this, I should be able to just go one time, let him fire off his laser beam, and then watch the rest of his health go all the way down. And we actually lost damage there because Quick Trigger procced his S3. Ed actually gets more damage if you use his skills without any skill stock because of alchemy and how that works. So we actually lost out on like 2000 damage cap right there, and we still one-shotted Big Bird. If we hadn't had Quick Trigger proc on S3, we would have been doing, what, 22,999 per hit right there. Dual Wield, in this case, did more than just double the damage, because if it would have doubled the damage, it would have taken 2 procs, right? Because if we did the first fight with 3 of his S3s, then 2 of them would have been in 1, which wouldn't have quite finished Jalabanga off, but because of all of the extra benefits that we just received damage-wise, because of Dual Wield, it was a one-shot easy tap on Big Bird. Now, I was going to showcase what breaking looks like as well, but it's more or less the same kind of thing. Just imagine how we saw one attack from Ed took half of Jalabanga's life bar. It's the same thing with the break bar on bosses if you bring a designated breaker. Instead of just dealing a certain amount with one combo or one skill, you're now dealing double the amount of break damage with that same combo. So you would just see that break bar being drained twice as fast, putting the boss into break quicker, which is, do I need to explain more? Dual Wield, once you can bring out the full potential of it, is just unlike anything in this game. They need to introduce something like it for magic casters. We know what that looks like because Lily has that in her trait. She has the Dual Wield for magic built in her, both her OG form and her shift form. But we need to see that come as a teachable skill for casters, just to bring them back into somewhat relevancy, because once you are maxing out your potential with the skill Dual Wield, in terms of DPS, there really is just not a lot that comes close to it. Like I was saying, I was going to show off that break bar example, but the video is getting long. I need to chop it and edit it and film a couple others today. Your boy Buddha is going on a nice little vacation at the end of this week, bleeding into next week. So I've got to try and prep some videos to post while I am gone. I'm going to try and be active while I can, but it's going to be more of a phones off kind of vacation with the ladies, spend some quality time. Also, guys, I made a Facebook finally. I'm going to try and get a little bit of Facebook presence, probably short clips of the videos I post here. Not quite as short as something like Instagram or Twitter, but maybe like 2, 3, 5-minute videos to the max over on Facebook to act as, short trailers of these videos here. So if you have a Facebook, if you're following Last Cloudia over there, it would mean so much if you went over and searched up Buddha Fish and went and followed me over there, just to spread a little more awareness. I didn't realize that the Last Cloudia community was so big over there, so I'd like to get involved. That's about it for the latest news that I can think of in terms of what's going on with your boy Buddha. So I'm going to end the video here. I hope I did some justice in explaining all of the benefits that come with dual wield. It's not just that you get an extra 20% to your damage. It is a lot more involved, a lot more deep than that, because of all of the things that you're doubling on top of your damage. I challenge any of you to show me or try to explain where you would use 14 SC to reap as many benefits as you get from actually equipping dual wield, because it is not a lot in terms of effectiveness when you're focusing something. Yes, you can give them some HP ups. Yes, you can give maybe some guard to the unit. You can give them some more tanky abilities, but I present the argument that who needs any tanking if the enemy is dead? So with that, guys, I'm gonna end the video. Y'all know what we say: work hard, play harder. See you in the next one.